We've all been waiting for this camera for a few years, and finally, it's here. This is the brand new Sony FX5. Last week, I was one of the very few people in the world to test the FX5 before its release. I shot a cinematic portrait of basketball player Worthy de Jong, and if you haven't seen that video yet, make sure to check it out first. Of course, I'll be breaking down the full creative process of my film Full Circle very soon, so stay tuned for that. In this video, I won't go over every single spec of this camera. There's plenty of people out there doing that, but I'll be sharing my first thoughts and experiences with the FX5. Let's dive right in. The FX5 might look a little bit like the FX3 at first, but it's a completely new camera with, of course, incredible capabilities. Let's start with the sensor, a 16.6 megapixel 5K sensor, and yes, 5K open gate. Finally, I love shooting in a 3:2 aspect ratio, and before this I was literally cropping my 16:9 footage to get there. So being able to use the full sensor is incredible. It also gives you a lot of freedom to crop in for different versions. The FX5 records 16-bit RAW internally in the X-OCN Codec. That codec is new to me, but it comes from the Sony cinema cameras like the Burano, the Sony FX6, or even the Venice. A little funny side note, Final Cut Pro doesn't support this codec yet. So for this launch film, I had to learn DaVinci Resolve in about 1 week. I think it was a good push to finally do it because I've been wanting to do this for over 3 years now, I guess. So from now on, my videos won't be edited in Final Cut Pro anymore. DaVinci Resolve will be the new standard. 16-bit combined with 16 stops of dynamic range is absolutely incredible. There's so much information in these files, and it makes color grading even more fun. The amount of detail in the highlights and the shadows is crazy. You can really see it in shots with a lot of contrast, like this shot of Worthy in his old childhood bedroom. The shadows are beautiful and full of detail, while the highlights roll off softly without clipping. All the information is still there in the image. You can push these files so hard without breaking anything, and you can even adjust your ISO, white balance or tint afterwards, since you're shooting in RAW, which basically means it's almost impossible to mess up your settings while shooting. That being said, I'd still always recommend shooting your image the way you want it to look like in the edit. Let's talk about the file sizes, because this was something I thought was a little bit tricky. When I heard about RAW 5K open gate footage, I was immediately scared about the file sizes of this camera. Here's the thing that shocked me the most. They're just not that big. With the SSD prices going up like crazy lately, it's a really nice surprise. To give you an idea, in this project I almost shot everything in RAW 5K open gate 3:2 in the X-OCN C2 codec at 25 frames per second, and on an SD card with 240 gigabytes that gave me a total of 68 minutes of footage. For 16-bit RAW 5K open gate footage, that's honestly impressive. You do need some fast cards though. I used the Sony TUF CF Express Type A cards, and they handled everything without a single problem. Let's talk about frame rates. I shot a lot of slow motions of Worthy floating mid-air, and it almost looks like time is standing still, and that's exactly what I wanted with this film. The FX5 will also do 120 frames per second in 5K open gate and 240 frames per second in 4K 16:9 with a small crop. You have to be careful though, because those file sizes are quite a bit bigger. There's a little bummer though, those two options will only be available in the V2 firmware, which will come out in 2027. These functionalities are going to be worth the wait though. Then there's triple bass ISO, 800, 4000 and 12800. Just great. Exactly what we needed and what we asked for. On the FX3, the gap between 800 and 12800 always felt a bit too big for me. But during this shoot, 4000 came in perfectly. And to be honest, I didn't even use 12800 a single time anymore during this shoot. But for really low light situations, it's amazing to have the option. I've used 4000 ISO quite a few times in a dark sports hall. And the grain? Nowhere to be found. The image stays incredibly clean. The FX5 has a new 3.5-inch monitor with a 4-axis swivel, which is really useful. It's a bigger screen, and it has been on my wish list for years, since the monitor of the FX3 is a little bit too small for me. Now you're able to flip it in so many directions, which is great to look at your footage. And the touchscreen, it works. Operating the menu is perfectly fine. You can even add all the settings you're used to on external monitors, straight on the screen of the FX5. Think about false color, waveforms, vector scopes, it's all there. The menu comes from the Burano, the Venice and the FX6, so it's completely different from the FX3. I've shot on nothing but the FX3 for the past 5 years, but after a few days of trial and error, it's actually pretty easy to navigate through the menu. I especially like using the monitor of the FX5 with the Big 6 menu on it. That's where I could find all the settings I needed during my shoot. And then I could see the final image on my external monitor. The FX5 of course has some incredible stabilization options. But since I shot my film mainly in 5K open gate, I couldn't really test the active steady settings. That's the main reason I also decided to rig out my camera a little bit, to give it some more weight, and that means a little bit more stable shots. But my footage is mainly shot on sticks anyway. There's nothing new about the monitor and control app, but I just wanted to share that it worked really well with the FX5 too. It's easy to set up, and it's amazing to just be able to control your camera from a distance. I used it quite a lot for some really high angle shots, where I couldn't really physically reach the camera anymore. Through this app, I could still set my focus and just hit record. Super simple, works great. The FX5 uses new batteries, which means longer shooting time. And I was genuinely impressed. I know buying new batteries is annoying and they'll probably be pretty expensive, but it really makes a big difference on set. Don't pin me down on the exact numbers, but I think with 2 batteries, you could almost get through a full day of shooting. Of course, it depends on the things like your settings, frame rates, and how much you're recording during the day. But for me, it was a pretty big difference from what I was used to. The FX5 also has a removable EVF now. I'm not really used to shooting with one, but I have to say, it's a pretty nice experience. You can see your image perfectly fine, even outdoors in bright sunlight. One thing is good to know, you cannot use the EVF together with the top handle. And I think I'll be using that top handle a lot for audio reasons. Speaking of audio, you can now record 32-bit float audio internally through the top handle. This top handle is different from the FX3, so if you buy this camera, you need to buy a new top handle as well. Of course, you can still just use the 3.5mm jack for simple audio setups, but keep in mind that's not 32-bit float. Another thing to know, the FX5 does not have a global shutter, but it comes close. My good friend Sjoerd Wess did a few proper rolling shutter tests, and you can see those in his video about the FX5. If you want to dive even deeper into all the specs and capabilities of this camera, definitely check out his video. I've mostly talked about all the things I love about the FX5. I felt like a little kid running around with his first camera, so I think that's a good sign. However, there are still a few things I'm not really sure about if I like them. Of course, the FX5 has no built-in ND filters. I think that's just impossible in a camera of this size. I don't know what Sony is planning, but having specs like the FX5 in a camera like the FX6 with internal NDs, that will be an amazing FX7. I don't know. For now, I'm really happy with the FX5 and I'm going to test the hell out of it. The new menu is a bit of a challenge. It's not a deal breaker, it just takes some time to get used to. Especially when switching from 5K open gate to 4K slow motion, it's really easy to forget to change certain settings. And sometimes the camera needs a full reboot when you're changing settings. Which makes sense, of course, technically, but during a shoot, I found it slightly annoying. As I said in the beginning of this video, this new codec doesn't work in Final Cut Pro yet. Keep this in mind, if you edit in anything other than DaVinci Resolve, the raw codecs might just not work in your software. Not yet. Then the top handle. I've never been the biggest fan of the FX3's top handle. It's plastic, it doesn't feel super solid, and mounting stuff on it just isn't really amazing. But the fact that the FX5 now needs a completely different top handle, but it barely got upgraded, aside from the 32-bit float of course, it feels like a little bit of a missed opportunity to me. Then there's one small thing, this camera doesn't shoot stills. You cannot take photos like you could with the FX3. But then the funny thing is that there is a shutter button on the camera, which is a bit weird. Why not make it a record button? So the big question of course is, what does the FX5 cost? The FX5 will be 6,000 euros including the top handle. And without the top handle, it's 5,400 euros. But is it worth upgrading? The answer is yes, I think so. This is not just an upgraded FX3. It's a completely new camera that opens up a lot of new possibilities. For me, the 16-bit internal RAW, the 5K open gate and the slow motion options are a few of the main reasons to upgrade. I think everyone who loves their FX3 will also love the FX5, but it's also a great addition for people already shooting on cinema cameras like the Venice, the Burano or the FX6. It's a proper cinema camera with real cinema capabilities in an incredibly compact body. I think that sums up my initial thoughts of the FX5. Let me know in the comments what you think of this new camera and if you're going to buy it or not. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.